Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of our show. I'm James.
And I'm Emily. Thanks for tuning in.
Today's lesson has a completely different vibe compared to our usual ones.
We'll still be sharing tips, but this time we're focusing more on a laid-back conversation style to keep things relaxed.
That's right. We've been living in Japan for over 10 years now, so we've had our fair share of language learning experiences. Though we're native English speakers, learning Japanese has taught us a lot about the challenges and joys of picking up a new language.
Absolutely. And today we'll share tips, methods, and maybe even a few funny stories to keep things light.
So, Emily, let's start with the basics. In your opinion, what's the most crucial factor for language learning?
Without a doubt, consistency. Setting aside even just 15 minutes a day can make a world of difference. When I first started learning Japanese, I made it a point to study a little every morning with my coffee.
That's a great habit. I think a lot of learners get overwhelmed thinking they need to study for hours. But really, short and regular sessions are more effective.
Totally agree. And it's not just about sitting with textbooks. You can mix it up. Listen to a podcast on your commute, or write down a few sentences in English every evening.
I couldn't agree more. For me, when I started learning Japanese, I found that integrating learning into my daily routine was key. For example, I used to listen to Japanese radio shows while preparing dinner. It wasn't just about learning, it became a part of my lifestyle.
That's an excellent point, James. Language learning doesn't have to feel like a chore. Finding ways to incorporate it into your hobbies or routines makes it so much easier.
And having a routine helps you stay on track, even on those days when motivation is low. But it's also important to be flexible and adjust your routine as needed. Life happens, and it's okay to take a break when necessary.
Right. Consistency doesn't mean perfection. It's about making steady progress over time, even if it's just a little bit each day.
You know, consistency reminds me of the compound effect. Small efforts every day lead to big results over time. It's like planting a seed and watering it daily. It takes time, but eventually, it grows into a strong tree.
That's a beautiful analogy, James. And it's true for language learning. Patience and persistence really pay off.
Another key aspect is immersion. Remember when we moved to Japan, Emily? We had no choice but to practice Japanese in real-life situations.
Oh, I remember those early days. My first trip to a ramen shop was like a language test. It's funny how necessity pushes you to learn.
Exactly. For English learners, creating a similar immersive environment can help. For example, change the language settings on your phone to English or watch your favorite movies in English.
And don't be afraid to make mistakes. Some of my best learning moments came from embarrassing slip-ups.
Like the time you accidentally ordered 10 bowls of rice instead of one?
Yep, that one's unforgettable.
Another immersion tip is to find language exchange partners. Having real conversations with native speakers is invaluable.
I'd also recommend joining local clubs or groups that use English. When I joined a hiking club in Japan, I met people from different countries, and we communicated mostly in Japanese. It was a fantastic way to improve naturally.
That's a great idea. And it doesn't have to be something formal. Even small things like chatting with a store clerk or asking for directions in English can help.
Absolutely. Immersion is about surrounding yourself with the language in a way that feels natural and enjoyable. It's like soaking in a hot spring. You slowly absorb the language around you.
And now let's talk about tools. There are so many apps and resources out there. Emily, do you have any favorites?
I'm a big fan of language exchange apps. They're great for practicing with native speakers. I also recommend reading simple books or articles. For beginners, graded readers are fantastic.
Those are solid choices. I've also heard good things about using flashcard apps for vocabulary building. But what matters most is finding something that works for you and sticking with it.
Yes, personalization is key. Some people thrive with structured lessons, while others prefer a more relaxed approach. Experiment and see what clicks.
And don't forget about video platforms. Watching tutorials, vlogs, or even cooking shows in English can be both educational and fun.
Right, and many platforms now offer subtitles, so you can follow along more easily.
Speaking of tools, I've also found that journaling in the target language can be incredibly effective. Writing down your thoughts, even just a few sentences a day, helps reinforce vocabulary and sentence structure.
That's a wonderful idea. Plus, looking back at your journal entries later shows you how much progress you've made. And if you're stuck, journaling prompts can spark new ideas to write about.
Another tool I've found helpful is using spaced repetition systems for vocabulary. It's amazing how much more you remember when reviewing at the right intervals.
All right, now let's address something that holds many learners back: fear of speaking. James, any advice on that?
My advice? Embrace it. Every mistake is a step toward improvement. Start with simple phrases and gradually build up.
And find a supportive community. Joining a language club or finding a speaking partner can make a huge difference.
Good point. Confidence comes with practice. Celebrate small victories like ordering in English at a cafe or having a short conversation with a tourist.
And remember, even native speakers stumble over their words sometimes. Perfection isn't the goal. Communication is.
That reminds me of a trick I used when I was nervous about speaking Japanese. I'd rehearse key phrases beforehand so I felt more prepared.
That's smart. And over time, as you use those phrases in real-life situations, they start to come more naturally. Practicing with a mirror can also help you feel more confident about pronunciation and facial expressions.
I'm sure staying motivated for language learning can be tough, but it shouldn't feel like a chore. How do you keep it fun, Emily?
For me, it's all about incorporating my interests. I love cooking, so I watch cooking shows in Japanese. English learners could do the same. Find content that matches their hobbies.
Great idea. Music is another fun way. Singing along to songs can improve pronunciation and rhythm.
And don't underestimate the power of games. Word puzzles, language quizzes, or even playing video games in English can be both educational and entertaining.
Speaking of games, have you tried those apps where you can chat with AI in English? They're surprisingly engaging.
Yes, they're a great way to practice conversational skills without the pressure.
Another fun activity is participating in online challenges, like posting a short video or audio clip of yourself speaking in English every day for a month.
That's a fantastic way to stay motivated and track your progress. Plus, it makes language learning more interactive and social.
And don't forget about rewards. Treat yourself when you reach a language milestone. It could be something as simple as enjoying your favorite dessert.
Now, let's move on to some listener questions. We've picked 3 great ones to answer today. James, what's the first question?
Our first question comes from Mika in Tokyo. She asks, how can I improve my listening skills? I often struggle to understand native speakers.
That's a fantastic question, Mika. I'd recommend starting with slower-paced content, like podcasts designed for English learners. Gradually, you can work your way up to regular speed podcasts or TV shows. What do you think, James?
I agree, Emily. And don't forget about subtitles. Watching a show with subtitles in your native language first, then switching to English can really help bridge the gap.
Absolutely. Also, try listening to the same content multiple times. Repetition helps train your ear to pick up new words and phrases.
Great tips, Emily. Now let's move on to our second question. It's from Kenji in Osaka. He says, I'm shy and find it hard to practice speaking English. What should I do?
Oh, Kenji, that's a common concern. I'd suggest starting with one-on-one conversations, either with a tutor or a language exchange partner. It's less intimidating than speaking in a group.
That's true. And you can also practice by recording yourself speaking. It helps you get used to hearing your voice and identifying areas for improvement.
Another idea is to practice speaking in front of a mirror. It sounds silly, but it's a great way to build confidence.
Exactly. Remember, Kenji, every small step counts. Don't be too hard on yourself.
What's our last question, James?
The final question comes from Sanai in Fukuoka. She's a high school junior preparing for her university entrance exams and asks, what's the best way to learn vocabulary? I keep forgetting new words.
A great question, Sanai. I'd recommend learning words and phrases in context. For example, when you learn a new word, Try to use it in a full sentence or even a short paragraph. This helps you understand how the word fits naturally into the language.
Exactly, Sanai. Learning words in context helps you remember them better because you associate the word with a real-life situation or example.
Yes, and make it a habit to use new words in your daily life. Write a journal entry, create a short story, or even just use the word in a sentence when you're thinking to yourself. Also, instead of trying to memorize a large number of words all at once, focus on repeatedly encountering the same words over time. The more frequently your brain sees a word, the more likely it is to remember it.
Great advice, Emily. Learning vocabulary is a marathon, not a sprint.
Well said, James. We hope that answers your questions, Mika, Kenji, and Sanai. Thanks for sending them in.
You know, Emily, when I was learning Japanese, I used to carry around a little notebook to jot down new words I heard throughout the day.
That's a great habit. I did something similar but used my phone instead. Technology makes it so much easier these days.
True. And those little moments of learning add up over time. Like the time I learned the word atsui on a particularly hot day and suddenly started hearing it everywhere.
Language really does come to life when you connect it with real experiences.
And that's why it's important to stay curious. Even when you think you've mastered a language, there's always something new to learn.
Well, I think we've covered a lot today. From consistency and immersion to overcoming fear and staying motivated, there's no shortage of ways to make learning English enjoyable and effective.
Absolutely. To our listeners, remember that language learning is a journey. Take it one step at a time, and most importantly, have fun with it.
Thanks for joining us today. If you have any questions or topics you'd like us to discuss, feel free to reach out.
We'll see you next time. Until then, keep learning and stay positive.
Bye.